The year was 1993, a year some of you may remember because that's when Doom was released. That's when X-Wing was released, the first Virtua Fighter game, Myst, The Seven Guests, all games that pushed the borders of graphics, of technology to a point where you could actually see a glimmer of what the future could bring. Especially in Doom, Doom was released in November of 1993 and we all agree that yeah, Doom was the first 3D game, Doom was the first game to have graphics that looked that good, Doom was the greatest of all in terms of technology. Only it wasn't, because just a month before it, a game came along, a game called Elite 2. To be more precise, it was called Frontier Elite 2, a sequel to an even older game made for technology that's so ancient, wireframe 3D ancient. Elite 2 was, I would use the term groundbreaking, but that's not enough. Groundbreaking is insufficient. This show will be uploaded to YouTube on the 12th of August, the same date that No Man's Sky will finally be released for PC. No Man's Sky has intrigued a lot of people because this is a game that lets you explore procedurally generated worlds in a way that you believe that no other game has let you do so before. It is, in essence, infinite because it can generate constantly new and new worlds until you get bored, because the upper limit is so insanely high you will probably never reach it. Elite 2 did not generate an infinite number of worlds, but it did accurately recreate this galaxy. This very galaxy with this very planet we're on right now in as much detail as the Amiga could handle. And it was made mostly by a chap called David Braben, which you may know him as the chap that made with Ian Bell the first Elite and now is working on Elite Dangerous, which is basically a remake of Elite 2, just not there yet in terms of capabilities of what you can do. What I mean that this game had an accurate representation of the galaxy, you need to understand exactly how accurate it was. I'm not referring just to the shape of it or the number of stars, but their position, their orbits, actual astronomical distances between bodies in space. It even had Newtonian physics that made sure you would crash and burn in the atmosphere of a planet if you didn't slow down from light speed when you were trying to land on said planet. You know, like what should have happened in Star Wars when the Millennium Falcon dropped out of warp behind the planetary shield. And because the physics were all calculated very carefully, time was also well represented. And not just in the way that the heavenly bodies moved, but in the way that you could fly to Earth, you could go to London and you could see what time Big Ben indicated, and it would be the actual time. To put things in perspective, this game had 800 kilobytes. It fit on a single floppy disk, though there were two floppy disks, the second one containing various interesting saved games from what the Wikipedia article tells me. It also tells me that the PC version was created, well, ported by Chris Sawyer. If you don't know who Chris Sawyer is, he is a wizard, an actual bona fide wizard that made Roller Coaster Tycoon and Transport Tycoon. And this game ran on hardware that's, well, what about the level of a 486 at best, because there were no Pentiums back then. Though actually it seems that it ran on a 286 as well, which you probably can imagine was not a powerful machine. I want to make sure I'm not understating the achievement that this game was. In 1993, you had Doom, which was a pseudo 3D game. It wasn't actually 3D, it made you believe it was 3D, but it wasn't. You had Myst and The Seven Guests, which looked amazing because everything was pre-rendered. You had X-Wing, which again looked amazing because a lot of it was pre-rendered and most of the stuff was just empty space. You had Virtua Fighter that had actual polygonal characters that fought in an arena, a very small arena. And then you had Frontier Elite 2, which simulated to scale, so 1-to-1 our planet, our solar system, and the entire rest of the galaxy. And it did so with that procedural generation that everybody's fallen in love with since Minecraft and now with No Man's Sky. Now granted, this was not an easy game to play. If you didn't understand the concept of slowing down once you were exceeding the speed of light by about 20 times, you would not have fun in this game. I don't remember it having an auto slow feature or a exit warp button like Elite Dangerous has, which made it very hard to actually get anywhere for me. Well, get anywhere without crashing into a planet or overshooting that planet by the distance between the Sun and Alpha Centauri. It was, after all, a simulator game made in 1993, you know, the year that simulator games were hardcore as hell. But if you manage to pierce through that shell, through that requirement of actually understanding how physics worked, how the game behaved, how it controlled, you found yourself in an endless universe. Oh sure, it wasn't endless, but with the number of stars in the Milky Way and all the planets they had, you would not be able to visit them all before you died. That's kinda true for every one of us with our Milky Way. We'll never actually visit any of them. Like all of us who are watching this video now will never visit another star, ever. We'll never know what it's like to look upon Alpha Centauri from a distance less than a light year. Isn't that depressing as hell? But if you use the Elite 2 to compensate for that, you found yourself in a world so big, so massive, and with so many possibilities that you at first may get a bit paralyzed by choice. You could do anything. There were no limitations to you, well, apart from the laws that govern this universe. Not just the natural laws, but actual laws made by the governments that were spread across the galaxy. There was two of them, I believe, a confederacy, an alliance, or... Elite had a story, it had a general idea of a story which you could ignore completely. It had more of a premise. It was just a game that you played because you wanted to visit the stars and see what was out there. You could do trading, you could do mining, you could do fighting, you could be a pirate, you could be an enforcer of the law, you could do so many things, fly so many ships, and just explore. Now granted, No Man's Sky looks a hell of a lot better. It's also about 10 million times bigger in terms of file sizes, and it looks like it's a lot easier to play, but Elite 2 did it first. You could land on planets, you could fly between mountain ranges, you could see a town on the surface, you could bombard the shit out of that town if you felt like it. And again, the clocks in that town would work. Now there were no planetary remodeling tools like Planet Busters, which is something I actually want to see added in No Man's Sky, or Elite Dangerous when the land on actual planets, not just asteroids, expansion comes out. Yeah, I know, you land on planetoids, not just asteroids. Still, they don't have atmosphere or population. They do have some bases, but that's not really that much. I'm not sure if I actually dare to encourage you to play Elite 2 because it is a difficult game to get into. But if you do, I recommend you try the OpenGL re-implementation of the game because it looks a bit better, it's not as pixelated, it may even run better on modern systems. Or you could give Elite Dangerous a go. In spirit, it's the same game, though not as technically versatile. But then again, probably no game will offer you as many options and as world as big as Elite 2 did. Unless, Star Citizen actually pulls it off. Or any other of the half a dozen similar games that are now being developed. The point is, none of them would be around if it wasn't for Elite, and especially Elite 2, a game that gave you an entire galaxy in just 800 kilobytes. If you enjoyed this show, hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Or, if you thought it was horrible, then share it with your enemies and make them suffer. We shall be your weapon of vengeance. But if you liked what you saw, you could, I don't know, maybe donate, because basically YouTube is horrible at revenue, by using the link in the description, or just buy my book. It's a fantasy book about, well, a lot of stuff. I guarantee it won't suck, and if it does suck, you can find me here and complain about it.